Good evening, welcome to the Evening Review Show. This is Jemima Beatrice. I'm your host this evening. Now, today we are going to speak to an activist, Monica Nambelela. As you know, we have seen a spike in food prices. We've seen unemployment, a spike in unemployment in the country. We've also seen some embarrassing scenes of the ruling party visiting and handing out food parcels to the destitute people at the Kupferberg landfill, where people have no houses, where they have no water, where they have no toilets. Now, before we go into that interview, let's have a look at tomorrow's headlines. Truck carrying unprocessed timber intercepted. A truck carrying timber was intercepted this week by the Ministry of Environment. Launch of the 50th Annual National Youth Week. The National Youth Council has launched its annual Youth Week this week, where they will focus on programs that empowers the young people of this country. Almost everyone breathes unhealthy air, WHO reveals. The latest World Health Organization report has revealed that almost everyone on the continent, in the world, breathes in unhealthy air. And this deals with the issue of pollution. Welcome back. Now here with me, we have activist, human rights and social activist, Monica Nambelela, as I've said earlier, and we'll be addressing a number of issues. Thank you for joining us, Monica.
It's my pleasure.
Now, to get into the interview, recently we've had the independence celebrations held in the Rongo region. It was by invite only. We've seen ordinary Namibians shut out and afterwards given this meager hand out food parcels. What do you make of that as an activist?
I'm totally convinced that Namibia has enough resources to provide shelter and a dignified living to all her citizens. But the problem lies with our greedy leaders who are more interested in self-enriching schemes and they are more interested in partying with themselves. The elite is the one that is sitting on the table, and they don't care about the nation. Mm-hmm. And it is clear what happened at the independence celebration. It is clear that we have greedy leaders who don't care about the nation. How is it possible? How on earth do 900 people spend 2.5 million Namibian dollars paid for by the hungry taxpayer to be wined and dined? Do they not feel ashamed to be holding Kilimanjaro-filled plates of food while the citizens are looking at them hungry?
Now, Monica, before you continue, these same, especially the government officials, they remained in Swakopmund for another few days, and they had the cabinet meeting there as well. What does that say? Obviously, there's S&T, there's travel allowance, there's accommodation at a time when Namibians are truly suffering.
You know, my philosophy, and I believe, we do not need a fellow countryman who is being subsidized by the hungry taxpayers to live in a huge mansion like State House. I think we have mispriorities. Mm-hmm. If you think about, the VIP protection officers that are looking after the president, those guys are severely underpaid, and when they go home, they go to the ever expanding silver cities, the ghettos, and most of the government employees, most of their pay slips are at cash loans. We are talking about Letseho, we are talking about Entrepo. The salaries of the people have not been increased in 10 years. And then you look at another misplaced priority. Look at a smart city called Heroes Acre, a smart city for the dead, where the dead have access to water and electricity, and they are being guarded by the living, who, when they knock off those military personnel, most of them live in the informal settlement, and when nature calls, they have to do their number one in the riverbed. It does not make sense. Then we cannot proudly be singing our national anthem.
Speaking about smart city, so the Swapo party leadership, constituency leadership, this weekend paid a visit to Kupferberg, where people are living on the dumping site. They're literally living on the dumping site. They are scavenging for food there as well. What does this say about the mentality of the party, and the fact that the party could have sanctioned such a visit to these people where they're only given food parcels instead of provided with the much needed sanitation and water that they don't have?
You know, in my interaction and also how I treat people, I cannot call a neighbor, let's say a poor neighbor, I cannot meet someone at the dumping site. I will invite them to the table to eat in a dignified way. Mm-hmm. And feeding the homeless at a dumping site will not end the inequality. It will not end the ever-growing unemployment rate. The ever-growing unemployment rate, I am especially talking about the youth unemployment rate. A parcel of food lasts a minute. There's no assurance that this person will have something to eat the next day. Mm-hmm. It's just sheer arrogance, because Swapo always says, we have the money. You know, if something like this happens, then I'm also questioning what capacity do they have in their think tank? Who comes up with something like that?
Yes. Now, speaking about Swapo saying they have all the money, do you think it is fair? Swapo feels it's unfair that they should be blamed for the lack of housing and the lack of sanitation, especially to these people that are living at Kupferberg. Do you think it is fair to blame Swapo?
For 32 years, the lives of our people have been going backwards just because of the ex-youth. The ex-youth, when I'm talking about the ex-youth, I'm talking about the liberators, mm-hmm. the youth that fought apartheid. Mm-hmm. They have totally forgotten their values. All they care is about themselves. If you look, the contrast, look at the new hospital. No, look at the new Swapo office, mm-hmm. in contrast to the new hospital. No, look at the new Swapo office in contrast to the Katutura hospital. Mm-hmm. The hospital is in a mess. As an activist, when I am sick, I don't only make use of private hospitals. I was recently admitted at Katutura Hospital. I got the shock of my life. Cockroaches and mice crawling all over the patients' beds. And the hospitals, no blankets. You see poor patients who come from poor backgrounds and don't have family support, they don't have blankets and it's flipping cold. I do not know why it's not being addressed. I want the minister to give me an answer to that. And in general, we have seen our leaders driving in those tinted Mercedes-Benzes whilst the nation is starving. We do not want to see ministers driving in those Benzes while our people are starving. And corruption, I believe that if you look at our population size, we could be the Switzerland of Africa. Look at all the resources, but it's only being eaten by the belly pushers. By the belly pushers, I mean the politicians. They have stolen so much from us. They have stolen from our ocean, fish rot, avid, social security, and with fish rot, the irony is here. A minister of justice is implicated in a corruption case. And he should be the one that should be advocating for justice. Then we have to ask ourselves, can we trust the government that we have in place? And it's really sad to find out that many men who lost their jobs because of a fish rot committed suicide. And it's so embarrassing and it's so heartbreaking that they sold out the country for a cell phone and foreign prostitutes. It's a scandal.
Speaking about GIPF, you mentioned that earlier. Now, what do you make of the Financial Institute Markets Act, which is famously now known as FIMA, which requires a 75% preservation of an individual's retirement fund until they turn the age of retirement? What do you make of that, given the fact that so many Namibians are dependent on social safety net?
Our unemployment rate is already very, very high, and many households survive on a single salary. And then you also consider the element of black tax. I only have one daughter, but because I don't see I am what I am because of others, I take in children that children within the family that need to be supported to make it through university. And as a government employee, I want the government, it's not a secret, I want the government to know that most of your pay slips are at Letsejo and Trepo and at Pika Cash Loans. And we worked so hard for our money. Now, just like they stole from our ocean fish rot, now we have got another rot. They want to steal our pension. The same way they stole from street vendors, from the SME bank. You know, the case of the SME bank is very close to my heart, because a cousin of mine, a maternal cousin of mine, Hafeni, is a security guard, and he had a saving with the SME bank, because they were promised that if you save with the SME bank and you want a loan, it's easy for you to get that loan. So my cousin saved $15,000 because he wanted his daughter to have a better life. It's a shame. And up to now, I'm so emotional. I'm angry. You know, I'm disappointed. Which state, which government steals from the poor? And nothing, you know, nobody talks about it. The president has had so many State of the Nation address, but on important issues like that, nobody talks about it. And it's a shame that the state steals from the poor.
It is indeed. In conclusion, as a youth leader also, we should also talk about solutions. When it comes to unemployment, how do you think should government address the rising youth unemployment in this country, the escalating levels of gender-based violence?
I'm very, very worried about the increasing youth unemployment rate. And it's a complex issue, but we need to understand it, that it is interlinked with education. Last year, November, 146,000 learners, grade 11 learners, sat for that exam. From that 146,000, only 8,000 learners made it to grade 11. No, I'm sorry, to grade 12, which means that 81% of those learners did not make it, and they are on the street. And in Parliament, they only discussed it for a day. I was expecting the president to talk about this national crisis when he had his State of the Nation address. Of course, our elite do not care because they send their children to the posh schools like the St. Paul's, the Windhoek International, and they do not care. You know, we need, if you are talking about Vision 2030, you are talking about development, but if education-wise, if you are going backwards, then you might just say, change Vision 2030 to Vision 2083, because it will not be achieved.
Yeah.
And many Namibians died to ensure that never ever will this nation be oppressed. But now we are being oppressed by our own fellow, the black elite. They came back driving Mercedes-Benzes and exploiting us worse than the apartheid system has ever exploited us. And where I am also very worried with regards to job creation, if you look at the mining sector in Namibia, many mines are now bought by the Chinese, and the government is a minority shareholder. Now we are having cases like Swapo Uranium is now calling workers to come in and work, and they are not being paid in money. They are being paid lunch packages, lunch packets. It's the greatest insult to the nation, and we should not accept it. And this, you know, I am very worried that the president the other day said that oil was discovered off the coast of Namibia, but he said the oil does not belong to the people. Who does the oil belong to? Look at countries like Dubai. Dubai was a desert. It was a desert. When oil was discovered, it was used in the interest of the citizens. Many women in Dubai, those that are not working, are getting an allowance from the state. I totally believe that Namibia should roll out a basic income grant. A basic income grant of about, I'm not talking about 3,000, I'm talking about 4,000. Because if that money that is in state coffers is used to empower the people, then there will be no money to fish rot. And I am also when we are talking about how to do things better, I'm also very, very disappointed in the Ministry of Gender, Child Welfare, what is, tell me again, Ministry of Gender.
Child welfare, yeah, and also poverty eradication.
I'm very disappointed in the Ministry of Gender, Child Welfare and Poverty Eradication, because for over 30 years, the most that they've been paying out to vulnerable children, 250. I want the minister, Ms. Sioka, please explain to the nation, how do you come up with such figures? Who decided on that amount? Are they economists? Are they social workers? Because I want, Honorable Minister, I want you to take 250 and 250 budget, go to ShopRite, buy everything one of your children needs for 250. And this is something that we need to address. These young children, when they grow up, if the education system is proper, when those young children grow up, they will build the economy of Namibia. Mm-hmm. But if we are neglecting them, then those young learners who didn't make it to grade 12, the 81%, many of them would be forced into crime, because a hungry man is an angry man. Mm-hmm. And the girls will be forced into direct or indirect prostitution. And where there is poverty, the link between poverty, there's also a link between HIV and poverty. Mm-hmm. Most of the countries, I'm taking for instance, Eastern Europe, countries like Belarus and Ukraine, those countries, HIV is higher than in the West European countries. Mm-hmm. And in poorer communities, girls are forced to engage in sexual relationships, sometimes with no protection. Mm-hmm. A man will tell you, I'll give you $100 more without a condom. So the ex-youth, our leaders, I'm appealing to you. We had a brilliant plan when we were in exile. We wanted to liberate our people, and we wanted every Namibian to live with dignity. When Swapo was operating from the bush, it looked like there was more structure. And I was born in the refugee camps of Swapo in Lubango, and I had malnutrition, and I was baptized to die. Mm-hmm. But because back then, Swapo was for the people, there was solidarity, justice, and human rights, I was taken from my teenage mother to a feeding center. Dr. Indongo, who was one of the main doctors in the Swapo refugee camps, it's because of him that I am alive. And if Swapo could do that while without a budget, while they were just depending on donations, why can't we do greater things for our nationals now that we have control over our resources?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for joining us, Monica, for such an insightful conversation. Thank you for tuning in. Good night. Got me feeling fresh.